Good morning and welcome to Closing the Distance. I'm Jeff Meyers, one of the pastors here at Roswell Presbyterian Church, here with our preaching pastor from this past Sunday, Ryan Jensen. Fabulous sermon, getting a little vulnerable up front in front of quite a few people. How'd it feel?
Yeah, I felt like it was an extended prayer of confession.
I love it, man. Well, I think you bear witness to and which the series was supposed to bear witness to God's work in our lives. Because I think a lot of people, we sit in the pews and we hear these people preach and we think, oh, they've figured it all out. They've lived a perfect life.
Oh no, yeah.
That's what they earn. That's what they had to do to earn the robe.
Yeah, I think that's why I never really felt called to ministry. I always saw these, very academic, pious scholars who knew these weird languages, who, read German theologians. I just thought that wasn't me.
Yeah. And maybe it shouldn't have been.
To be determined.
I feel the same way. And I like God's call is not because of our adequacy, but it's a call to step into something the unexpected. So I want to start off with this. I teased this in my newsletter last week, but what was your original sermon title?
The original sermon title was Jonah was a jerk, and so was I, or so am I.
Well, but let's explore that a little bit. So you were talked out of using that sermon title, correct?
Correct.
How?
I think the idea was that children shouldn't go around using the word jerk, particularly as it applies to one of their pastors.
I was kind of disappointed you shied away, but I appreciate your discretion, saving our children. If the worst thing my kids say is jerk, I feel like I've done pretty well.
Yeah. End of the day, that's not too bad.
All right. So why did you choose Jonah? Because I did. If you would have asked me of the 66 books in the Bible that Ryan Jensen was going to choose for his message, I don't think I would have guessed Jonah.
Well, first of all, like I alluded to in the sermon, I think it's a comedy. But also the idea that Jonah didn't only say no thank you, but that he ran away, which was sermon title number 2, that option, running away.
Yep. And so when was the first time you remember reading the book of Jonah?
As a whole, that's a good question, because, like I said, I think a lot of us, Jonah and the whale, and that's it. But then you get deeper into the story. It's probably a Bible study back in the First Presbyterian Church, Shelbyville days.
Did it resonate with you early on, or was it only later on that you came to identify with Jonah?
I think only in hindsight, because how you interpret scripture or read scripture. I think my first idea was that you had to read it, from cover to cover in a very, neutral tone. Everything was the same. There was, no genres, no, just this one voice, and you had to read it very seriously and word for word.
And very literally. And I experienced, growing up kind of a fundamentalist. I was very glad when I went to seminary. It was like, oh, the people who wrote this had personalities. They had senses of humor.
Yeah, they used hyperbole and all kinds of different language.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Joan, have you read the Eugene Peterson book, what's it called? It's on Jonah. It's like sitting on the unbearable plant or something. Have you read it?
Oh, I don't think so.
Somebody, I haven't read it either, but I do own it. Um,
We should read it. It can't be that long because Jonah, the book itself, is not that long.
I know. Under the unbearable plant, I think it's called. And he,
Oh, yeah.
and Peterson used, and for folks who don't know, Eugene Peterson, probably one of the most famous Presbyterian pastors of the past 50 years, uh, wrote a ton of books, very prolific. Um, I'd encourage people to check out his version of the Bible that he translated called The Message. Um,
Mhm.
but using Jonah as kind of a parable for Christian ministry.
Hmm.
And
That would have been a really good resource in sermon prep.
yeah, sorry, I didn't help out. Now I tell you.
Well, that's the tail end of the story, and I would have loved to have gotten into that, but that would have been a 30 or 45-minute sermon, which we can't really.
Do.
Attention spans aren't that long these days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially with our sermon, our service schedule on a Sunday morning.
Right.
All right. So what, as you thought about Jonah, did you feel like you ran away from God's call like Jonah?
I think when I went off to Memphis, I ran away from a lot of things. All those, expectations, responsibilities, this kind of pressure. Yeah, I grew up in a small town, so everybody, pretty much knows who you are, your family name. You go off into for me, Memphis was a big city. Of course, Memphis is nothing compared to an Atlanta or New York, but for me, it was a big city where I was able to be more anonymous. So, I continued to do certain things like student government, student ambassador board, but, I got into a fraternity, and to a certain degree, it resembled Animal House. And, you know,
Yeah.
had a good time. So the Presbyterian Student Association was right down the road, but I had no desire to participate in it. And then later on, when I was asked to volunteer and to become an employee for the church, I thought maybe I'll do it for a month or a year, but no, that's not a real job. That's not what I was, going to do with my life.
Yeah. So what do you think you kind of, your arc in ministry kind of fits maybe a standard arc of you start in youth ministry and then you kind of work your way. As you get older, you work with older folks. How do you think starting out in youth ministry influenced your kind of philosophy and practice of ministry in the future?
Well, youth ministry, you have to become a teacher. You're also, a cheerleader and a coach, and an energetic presence to, get these kids going. But then you realize at some point, I've got to do some research, some study, and have something to offer when it comes to, the meat and potatoes of why we're there. And people kept telling me, throughout, hey, you should go to seminary. And I thought they were just saying that because that's what you say to people who are in youth ministry who haven't gone to seminary.
Yeah.
It's just a natural assumption. Hey, that's what they'll do. And I realized that, and I kind of rejected it. At one point, I went and visited Louisville and Union just to appease people. Mm-hmm. And it kind of confirmed to me at the time that that's not for me. And then in Franklin, the 3 years that I spent in Franklin, Tennessee, it was just huge. In my spiritual growth, my personal growth, my maturity. and I had more responsibilities with the larger church that I think kind of brought me into that. And at that time, I visited Columbia and Austin, and I thought to myself, I can see this happening.
And now for you choosing Austin, I don't think you went into this in your sermon, but you were in a romantic relationship at this point
Yeah.
with your now wife, and she wanted you
Yes.
to go to Columbia.
Well, she had it figured out. She was going to go to Oglethorpe, which she did, to get her master's of arts in teaching. And you can move there to Decatur, go to Columbia, live with my dad, we'll get married, and everything will work out. But when I got to Austin, Texas, it was just like the clouds parted and the sun shone down, and it was just kind of a when kind of thing. And so we had a difficult stretch, kind of like Dan and Cindy with the letter writing and the phone calls. We had this little book that we would put pictures in and write in and send it back and forth. So the first year was a little shaky. The second year we got engaged, and the third year she moved out to Austin and met all the people that I'd become friends with and got to enjoy the city a little bit.
That speaks a lot to your relationship and to Laura.
Yeah, more to Laura.
And her faithfulness to you. And so what was so formative about Austin?
For me, I love that I wasn't the type that was just going to spend my entire time in a study carrel in the library. So the setting to have the seminary virtually on the campus of the University of Texas and all that was going on in that place. And plus Austin, at least at that time, was just a really neat city to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about explosive growth. And
plus I wanted to I spent my whole life in the Southeast, and that's, it's not like I was in New Jersey, but the Southwest, Texas, completely different thing. So
yeah, Texas is a country unto itself, kind of.
Well, people ask me, how do you like living in Texas? I said, I don't know. I live in Austin. It's its own thing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've only been there once. One of your predecessors, Emily Wright, now is a senior pastor at Westlake.
Yeah.
Hills there in Austin. I went down there for her installation service, and I love it. I mean, the food, the music. I mean, it's a pretty special place.
I think I told you I used to work there.
You did? That's right. What did you do at Westlake Hills?
They had a Wednesday night dinner, and I was the assistant cook.
And actually, you were quite a great cook.
Well, at that time, it was more deep frying miniature corn dogs and things like that. So there wasn't a whole lot that went into it.
So, but what's your specialties now?
I think gumbo is like the one thing that I've been working on over time to perfect. And then living in Memphis and Texas, barbecue.
Okay, so what's your preferred barbecue?
Baby back ribs.
Oh.
Followed by pork butt, and at some point I'm going to try to get brisket figured out, but that's a delicate process.
So having lived in Texas, Memphis, and now Atlanta, like, what's your favorite kind of barbecue?
I mean, Rendezvous in Memphis is a tourist trap, but it's also the only place that doesn't put sauce on the ribs because they're served dry.
Oh.
And sauces at the end of the day are made to cover up the flavor of things that are not really that desirable. So when you present your ribs without sauce, that's saying these are perfect as they are.
All right. Well, for a lot of us, we're not be able to go to Memphis. Where do you go in the Atlanta area?
I think Fox Brothers is going to be the Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
And there's a place not too far from here It's American barbecue, but with a Korean spin, not to be confused with Korean barbecue, but it's
Oh, is
also
that
top notch.
heirloom?
That's heirloom. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, I've heard of that. Yeah, yeah.
I give that a close second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I want to bring up this because I had forgotten about my own story. And then when you mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, I did that too. So you did Boys State.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
explain to people what Boys State is if they're unfamiliar.
it's like almost like a paramilitary kind of thing, but you go
Paramilitary.
well, I think we had like a colonel or a general or something that was leading this whole thing. But you go onto the campus of a university and you set up your own government. So you run for, anything from garbage collector to mayor to governor. And basically it's a real life lesson in civic leadership.
Yes. Yeah. I remember I went to Ellensburg, Washington, which actually I think that's where, the Colin Cowherd, who's like
Yeah.
I think he's from Ellensburg, Washington, which is like totally random. But and we did Boys State, yeah. And it's like for rising seniors,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all boys. I think there might be a girls' state too. I don't know. But
Yeah,
it's
I
like
don't know.
it's a week-long process where you run for office. And
Yeah.
I
It's a big honor, but it's also pretty formative, because you're getting mixed up with all these other, kids from local high schools and the surrounding area.
yeah, I remember it being a really cool time. I remember there was a guy, there were like little subgroups that you came from. And there was a guy, and his slogan was, I think his name was like Chris James or Chris Kirk or something like that. And he was like,
Yeah.
vote for the guy with two first names.
Well, it's a start.
But when you said that in the sermon, I was like, wait, did he say Boys State? I was like, I did that.
Boys State, yeah.
I don't know. Do they still do that?
I have no idea, but it was a big deal once upon a time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could use some more Boys State in our civic life.
Yeah, I had a cousin from a neighboring town, and he went, and I think he just played basketball the whole time. But as with anything, it's what you make of it. So
that's right. All right. So okay, so you're in Austin, blah blah blah. A lot of people may not know that you were, like the head of staff at, is it First Pres Lawrenceville or
Lawrenceville Presbyterian.
Okay, and I mean, you were there what, 10 years?
Yeah, almost 11.
Almost 11 years. How was that experience formative before you coming to RPC?
Well, in a smaller church environment, you said I was senior pastor, but I was really the only one. So solo pastor. And you end up doing a lot of things. And a lot of things don't happen unless you lead them or you're a part of them. And, of course, we didn't have a DAC in it, but we did have a congregational care team, and kind of related to what I do here. We made visits, phone calls, notes, things like that. But also just in terms of leadership, administration, just having kind of your fingers on all the things that go on in the life of the church. And, we went through some hard years, the whole COVID thing. That was a weary time. And, capital campaigns, building, you name it. We were kind of mixed up in it.
Mm-hmm. And what made you feel called to RPC out of Lawrenceville Press?
I knew it was time for the next thing. Again, it was just, I was turning 50. I'd been there 10 years. Just kind of all these timelines are, kind of coming together. We'd made it through COVID, felt like, had some positive momentum going, but I just felt called to something other. And I called Joy Fisher, our congregational consultant, and I said, hey, listen, I don't know what this is, but I just know it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so our online dating network for pastors and churches that are looking. I just started, every once in a while I'd take a look. I'd run it by Laura, and then Roswell popped up. And I think the assumption is you're an associate pastor, then you're a pastor of a small church, then you become pastor of a larger church. And I just didn't feel that was for me.
Mm-hmm.
One church member said, "So you're taking a step back? You're going back?" I said, no, it's it's just next.
Yep.
And when I found out about Roswell, I told the search committee it could have been in Roswell, New Mexico, but just the church culture, the position, what I would be called to do, it was a great fit, I thought.
Yeah.
Well, but of course, that's a great fit for 2 or 3 different parties. So
right, yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we feel so blessed for you to be here, and honestly, if folks don't know, if they missed Easter, you stepped up into and I was talking to a couple of our leadership trying to when my wife had our baby, and I was like, I was just not in the head. She came a couple weeks early, and so I was not in the headspace to miss the Super Bowl of our year. But I also couldn't do it because I just I was too busy building cribs and such. But
well, Betsy had asked me, a long time before that, just in case this happens, would you be willing to be the backup? And I said, well, if you trust me to do that, sure. But I didn't think too much about it. And then it was a staff meeting on Monday that you got the news and you had to run out. And I thought to myself, well, it's Monday. He could come back. And Betsy said, no, you're it. So I said, I didn't mean that thing that I told you back then.
Be careful what you say yes to. Well,
right.
I would say, like many people, I joined you via live stream for the 11 a.m. service, and you did a fantastic job. And I knew you'd done a lot of Easters, having been the primary preacher for a long time.
Yeah.
And so you had a lot of good material in the can ready to go, I imagine.
I thought about it and I went and looked at some of those, but I'm the kind of person I go back and look at what I've done before and I never really like it. So I kind of spun a new one for.
Yeah. Well, you did a fantastic job. What did it feel like? I mean, there's a lot of people here on Easter.
Well, yeah, I didn't sleep too well the night before because I was like, it's the big game tomorrow. And it was really exhilarating. I was, a little nervous going into it, but once you go into that first service, you're just off to the races. So you don't really have time to think about being nervous or, much of anything else other than delivering this word and then doing that again and again and again. So
yeah, well, you did a fantastic job.
It was beautiful day. The music was perfect. The weather was perfect. I mean, Mother Nature was showing out. I mean, you couldn't have asked for just a better overall environment.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Well, thank you so much for stepping up and doing that. As we're kind of I'm looking at the time, we're getting kind of to the end here, but so we got a couple big initiatives. The congregational survey that's coming up. Could you say a word about that? Why are we doing it? What is it?
So the first is a church assessment tool, and that really gives you a gauge and a read of where the church thinks that it is in a given moment. And I think the last time that we did it, it was right before you got here or after you got here?
Right before.
So it's been a minute. So things have changed drastically. The church has gone through a lot of transition in leadership. It's gone, on the other side of COVID, which the digital ministry has expanded. So we're really trying to figure out where are we right now as Roswell Presbyterian Church, and what are the things that we need to anticipate, and who are the people online that have found us, and how do we minister to them? And then the second part is not going to take long at all, but it's a time and talent survey. And we really hope that everybody fills that out, whether you're 9 years old or 99 years old. We want to know what is it that you're interested in doing, so that potentially we can pull any given list of names out of the database and call these people and be in touch with them and get them engaged. So membership engagement will be the product of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your leadership of that. That's all part of our, next 5-year strategic plan, is we're trying to engage people in the work of ministry. And this, what we do is not the project of the pastors or the elders, it's of the congregation. And we're called to serve one another and also our local community. And so, from family promise to ushering, to being elders, to lay parish visitors, Stephen ministers. I mean, I think people have no idea how many ministries and how much is being done here. And we need people to do the work of ministry that we're called to.
That's the thing I was blown away by, because we have, a big staff, but if we were in charge of doing everything, nothing would ever get done, because we have so many volunteers who are plugged into so many different ministries and aspects of church life. That's what makes this place go. And so we want to honor those people that are doing it, but also build them up and build around them.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you for your leadership of that. And so people can be in the lookout. My weekly newsletter will have a link in there. Also on the 12th, in our combined worship service, we'll be passing those out. People can do it on their phones if they want, bring their iPads at the conclusion of the service. So we're going to invite people to do that, and really want people's input, so the leadership of the church can be aligned with the congregation, and we can be moving all in the same direction. Well, as we wrap up here, Ryan, do you have any reading, movie, TV show recommendations for us?
I watched Baby Unicorn, Baby Panda. It's on Netflix.
I don't know, Ryan. You're telling me. I haven't watched it. It involves a panda?
It involves a baby animal, but it's there's a lot that goes on with the context of the show, and it's a limited series. I think there are 8 episodes.
Okay. And
why I'm drawing a blank. The title is irrelevant. It's about a guy who goes. It's a real life story. It's about this guy who goes through this incredible experience of having a stalker, but then he kind of becomes entangled in it, and the story evolves from there. So. Okay.
Well, I thought you were going to recommend the
Baby Reindeer.
Oh, Baby Reindeer. Okay, now we got
that's it.
We'll have to check it out. I thought you were going to recommend The Sopranos.
I watched that for the first time, and I have to be careful what I recommend to people, because they'll go on and watch it, and they're like, I can't believe my pastor is watching this stuff. But I did enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, we have to be familiar with all sorts of walks of life. And
that's right.
And The Sopranos is maybe a little more Old Testament than new.
Right.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your wonderful message on Sunday from the book of Jonah. And we know you are a human being just like the rest of us, fallible.
Very much.
You got issues, but luckily you married up like the rest of us. So we're thankful for Laura and and your family, and we're so glad you're here at RPC. Have a great week, man, and thanks for checking in with us.
You too. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, y'all. We'll close the distance next week. Take care.